Game on here. A trade war between the United States and China is here. It's real. At the stroke of midnight, the U.S. hit China with tariffs on $34 billion worth of goods. China immediately responded with its revenge tariffs of equal value, accusing the U.S. of launching the largest trade war in economic history and calling America trade bullies. China is threatening high-value U.S. exports, cars, crude oil, cash crops like soybeans. The farm goods here are strategic. They hit states and really county by county places that voted for President Trump. The U.S. tariffs target high-tech industries China vows to dominate: aerospace, robotics, manufacturing, autos. Now, American companies will pay these tariffs when they import the goods. They can either absorb that cost or they can pass it along to consumers. And so far, the U.S. has avoided slapping tariffs on things consumers buy, like shoes and cell phones. The White House really trying to minimize that direct outrage from consumers. But the U.S. won't be able to avoid those goods if President Trump follows through on this threat he made to hit $500 billion worth of Chinese goods. $500 billion. That's what he told reporters yesterday. That's roughly the entire amount the U.S. imported from China last year. Now, consumers would be losers if this really continues to escalate, right? Also, domestic manufacturers, they pay to import foreign metals. That makes the cost of their products more expensive. Pork producers and soybean growers, both affected by retaliatory tariffs here. In fact, 100 soybean growers, guys, head to Washington next week. They want to explain how these trade actions, the president's trade policy, is hurting their livelihoods. The only clear winner I can see so far, the U.S. steel industry. You've seen a couple of furnaces fire up again in Granite City, Illinois, because of demand for domestic steel, you guys.
Of course, that industry, Rome, is smaller than the manufacturing industry,
right,
which is impacted downstream. Romans, thanks so much. Joining us now, CNN political commentator and Washington Post columnist Catherine Rampell and CNN senior economics analyst Stephen Moore. Catherine, I want to start with you. You say the question isn't whether this will hurt the U.S. economy. The question is, how much?
Exactly. Look, these tariffs that we are imposing, which affect, as you mentioned, our own manufacturing industry, lots of downstream firms, and there's like an order of magnitude more companies that depend on steel and semiconductors and all the other things we put tariffs on. Right, exactly. They're going to be hurt from this, as well as the companies that are facing retaliatory tariffs. The only question is how big the magnitude of that pain is. It's going to be a drag on the economy. I don't think we're approaching recession territory yet, but if things do escalate, it could get very, very bad.
Stephen, you're on the record as never being a fan of tariffs. How are you feeling about this move?
Well, look, this is good versus evil. You know, the United States, you put up those numbers on your screen that we buy about $500 billion worth of their stuff. They're only buying about $150 billion of our stuff. So it's laughable that they say we're launching a trade war. They have not opened up their markets to U.S. goods. I talk to CEOs all the time who say it's almost impossible to penetrate the China market. It is not a level playing field. It is not a fair situation. It is not reciprocal.
So now you like tariffs. I just want to be clear.
No.
Now you're comfortable.
Look what I'm saying. This is something that Trump ran on, and this is something I'm in full agreement with him on.
You are?
Yeah.
That's new.
Yeah, no, we can't. Look, there's some aspects. Let me be clear about this. I am not in favor of the auto import tariffs. I'm not in favor of the steel tariffs. But I'm very much, I think, with the American people of getting really, really tough with China. And the only question is, why is this just happening now? This should have happened 2015. 10 years ago. I mean, where was Clinton?
Tough with China.
Where was Bush? Where was Obama?
Where was Obama? I'll tell you where Obama was. The strategy for getting tough with China was banding together with our allies around the world who have been similarly harmed by China. Because you're right, China has been misbehaving. Not on the deficit. That doesn't really matter so much. That's affected by lots of other factors. It's about intellectual property theft, right? Yeah. The way to get tough with China was banding together with all of the other countries that were also having their IP stolen. I'm talking about Japan, Canada, Mexico, basically all of the signatories to what was called the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It was getting together and having a multilateral coalition of the willing, a term that Larry Kudlow has since used as what the strategy we should be pursuing is. And Trump pulled us out of it like on his third day of office. That was the way to get tough with China, not by throwing tariffs willy-nilly that affect our own companies and consumers.
Catherine, we've tried that approach for many, many years.
No, we didn't. We pulled out of TPP. We pulled out of TPP. You were in support of TPP just a few years ago.
Look, I was sort of, look, I don't disagree with you on TPP. I think it probably, on balance, would have been a valuable thing to do. I don't think it would have stopped China from its bad behavior. Now, look, this question about whether there's going to be a trade war, I hope not. China's going to have to stand down here. They're going to have to make real concessions. But if they're not, then they're in big trouble.
They're retaliating.
Look, but I know. But you know what, Catherine?
No one wins a trade war.
No, well, that is true. But it is also true that, look, if we can't trade with China, we sneeze. If they can't trade with us, they catch pneumonia. Their economy cannot grow without access to the U.S. market.
If you look at
they sell us $500 billion.
If you look at the tariffs that we have been imposed on China, they are more likely to affect American multinational companies.
How is that possible? They're selling
look at the list. Look at the list.
But look at how much they're selling us $500 billion worth of stuff. But
we haven't imposed $500 billion worth of stuff, thankfully.
So they have much more to lose here. They are
imposing much more strategically targeted tariffs on Trump country, on places that will be much more politically sensitive to Republicans.
Well, here's the other issue. You guys asked the question whether this could cause a recession. Look, we're going to get, by my estimate, and I think I'm going to be pretty close, we had 4.5% growth for the second quarter. The U.S. economy is booming right now. The Wall Street Journal says the U.S. economy, no small part, thanks to Trump.
1 quarter of growth means very little, especially if you're about to launch a trade war.
Because we can't go on with the status quo. That's why. Right. And by the way, this is the reason, Catherine, that Donald Trump won states like Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, West Virginia.
Just because he's selling bad ideas and that sales pitch is working doesn't mean they're not bad ideas.
Americans realize that we can't go on with running these gigantic trade deficits, with them stealing our goods and services, with them building their massive military. I mean, look, China is now not a friend of the United States. They are an adversary.
I agree with you. I agree with you that they've behaved badly. Where I disagree with you, and where I think you used to be on this same side, is that the strategy for correcting that behavior is getting more leverage by getting together with our allies and using that and using that alliance.
So what's changed? How have you changed, Stephen, in your attitude about that?
So that's one point I think Catherine and I agree on. I think if there's been a flaw in Trump's strategy, it has been, you don't want to fight a 3 or 4 front war at the same time. You're right, Catherine. We should be stabilizing our relationship with Canada and the Europeans and so on, so we can focus on the bad actor here, which is clearly China.
Yeah, and what's especially
so I agree
galling,
with you on that.
What's
but I just don't think the TPP would have been enough.
Okay, what's especially galling here is that now China is basically stealing our once very promising strategy for keeping China in line. They're trying to build an anti-American alliance. There was a report out of Reuters this week saying...
We'll find out who our real allies are. By the way...
We're alienating them.
Catherine,
it's our fault that there isn't even an opening for China here.
I talked to Larry Kudlow about this. I've talked to the president about this. At the G7 meeting, this hasn't been reported, Donald Trump put on the table 0 tariffs with Europe and Canada, and they walked away from the table. So don't say that we're the ones.
Because disingenuous.
No,
because
it wasn't.
Trump has launched all of the...
They don't want 0 tariffs because they have tariffs that are twice as high as ours are.
That is false. That is false. You can look at World Bank data, and it shows the average tariff rate, the trade-weighted average tariff rate in the United States, in Japan, in the EU, in all of these countries that are our allies, and they are comparable. In fact, ours are
Canada's
higher.
Ours are how do you explain their 200% tariff on our dairy products?
We have a 200% tariff on peanuts and tobacco. You can cherry pick any one individual product that you want. Lots of countries have particular products that they have very high tariffs on. They have particular products they have very low tariffs on. What matters is the overall picture. And if you look at the overall picture, our tariff rates are actually comparable to all of the countries that Trump claims are bullying us that are our friends.
Except they slap a 15% value-added tax on everything that we bring into those countries.
You know there's a big difference between a value-added tax and a tariff.
Well, it's like a tariff. It's a tax that's imposed right on the border. It is not like a tariff.
It's like a sales tax.
Right, but it's imposed. So when we sell stuff over there, the first thing that happens when our cars or our manufacturing products hit their border is they slap it with a tax.
I can't believe you're trying to change the subject of value-added taxes.
Let me ask you this: Does it stop at $35 billion? Does it stop at $35 billion both ways here, or do you think this goes on and goes up?
It's very hard to say at this point. Trump has thrown around much bigger numbers that should be very scary to us, not only on China, of course, on car imports coming from anywhere around the world, including the EU. It's hard to know. I think Trump hasn't quite realized yet how much pain he's inflicting on his own voters. At the point that he maybe starts to notice that, he'll back down, but I just don't think he has really taken the time to appreciate how international supply chains work, how much pain this is going to cause for his own people. And at the point that we start to actually see that damage seep into the economy, and we're seeing it a little bit now, like China has stopped buying soybeans from the U.S., they're buying soybeans from Brazil, for example. Those soybean farmers are in Iowa and other places that voted for Trump. Maybe he'll start to reconsider what he's doing, but right now he seems full steam ahead.
Avalon, how do you see it?
Yeah, Stephen,
Hold on, Stephen.
We're all in agreement, needed to getting tough with China. Everyone at the table seems to be in agreement on that. But Larry Kudlow, your friend, has said that, the tariff talk really was a negotiating strategy. It was a brushback pitch. Well, here we are, day one. So I guess the question is, now that's no longer a negotiating strategy, but the trade war is on. Have you changed your 25-year long-held opinion about free trade and tariffs? Or is this simply about providing political viability in the party of Trump?
Look, I've always been for free trade. Free trade is one of the pillars of growth. There's no question about international trade has caused massive reductions in global poverty. My point is that we don't have trade, we don't have anything near free trade with China. We've opened up our markets to the Chinese for 25 years. This is my point. And China's never opened up their markets to us. Now they're stealing. Now they're massively building up their military. Look, we're dealing with the new Soviet Union here. This is not a country that is in any way friendly to the United States. Now, look, what I would do, by the way, is I would use the money that we're going to raise from the tariffs to help out those farmers, because we cannot back down here. If we back down here to China, it's going to be much worse for the U.S. in the long run.
Look,
my point is this.
One of these two countries has a midterm coming up. One of them doesn't. I think that tells you a lot about who has the leverage here.
Midterm elections in China come up once every 5
years. Yeah, but you know what's so
years.
interesting about this? Can I make one quick point?
Go ahead, Steve.
All you guys have talked about on CNN for the last year is foreigners intervening in a U.S. election. And this is exactly what China is doing right now, basically, right? They're using tariffs to try to influence our elections. We should be totally outraged by that. We should be totally outraged by that and never let that stand.
Catherine, let me ask you this. At what point
right? Do you agree with me on that point? We should be totally outraged that they are trying to use trade as a weapon to influence our elections. I don't think this is quite like hacking
DNC servers. Yeah. I don't know if this amounts to
maybe skating where the puck's going,
but collusion.
Yeah, this is
but David, I understand your point that they're trying.
I don't see anybody on the left complaining one iota about China.
Hang on.
Okay.
It's notable. We have noted quite a bit. We have noted quite a bit that they are doing this strategically. They are targeting things because they know it will inflict specific pain here. You could make the case. You could make the case, Stephen, that China is fighting this trade war with its head, and the United States is fighting with its gut right now. The president is lashing out where he wants to, where he can, without necessarily thinking exactly where it hurts. And Catherine, my question to you here is there something that the United States is doing or can do that will get China to blink? Because you and Stephen are in agreement here that China has been treating the United States and the world unfairly. Will this policy, TPP aside, that's gone. That's not happening now.
Is gone,
so with these tariffs that the president has already imposed and the ones he might impose, will that push China toward the desired action?
I don't believe so. Again, China does not have an election coming up. They have obviously not a democracy over there. They can sustain a lot more pain than we can for that reason, and also because they have designed their tariffs in such a way that it causes their consumers and their producers much less pain than our tariffs on them are creating for us. So I don't see China backing down here. I really do think, as many trade experts who are much smarter than I believe, that the way to get China to back down is to band together with all of the other countries that have been similarly victimized by China. And we are doing the opposite of that. We are driving them into China's arms, or at the very least, driving them away from us.
All right, Catherine Rampell, Stephen Moore, we're going to take the show on the road. We're doing a road show with Rampell and Moore. That was a great discussion. Do appreciate you being here and taking part in it.
Take care.